Hi there, and thanks for joining me. Today I'd like to talk about why I sold the best bike I have ever owned. And I would like to take you through the thought process of why it was the best bike, and also how I came up with the criteria for scoring it, but also importantly, what sort of rides I go on and how that influenced my decision. At the end of 2024, I found myself owning three Honda DCT models, a Honda X-ADV, a Honda Rebel 1100, and also a Honda VFR1200. Each one of these bikes I really like and really enjoy driving, but I thought three Hondas, three DCTs, I needed a little bit more variety in the garage. So first let me explain how I ended up with three DCT bikes. The first one out of this three was the Honda X-ADV, and I've owned that for 5 years. And that was really a conscious choice to buy a new bike. I traded in a Honda X750 and also a Honda Integra against that bike, and that was my only bike for a while. But then BMW brought out the Heritage range, and I really loved the way that the Urban GS looked, so I bought a second-hand one of those, and unfortunately didn't get on with that bike at all, and I'll explain that in another video. And I traded that in against the Honda Rebel, because again, I really loved the look of the blacked out looks of that. I knew immediately after I test drove the bike that I really wanted the Rebel. It is one of the most easy bikes you could ever hope to ride. Now, the VFR was purchased on a bit of a whim. I think I was feeling a bit stressed and just wanted to splurge some money, go away on a trip. And I took the train down to the south coast of England and drove this home. Wonderful drive, really lovely bike, and it was a great bike to own. But out of these three, I had to decide, well, I want to change one, possibly even two of them had to go. So I came up with a criteria and a scoring mechanism to decide which ones to keep, which ones had to go. And it was a hard decision because I really love all three of these bikes. How a bike looks is extremely important to me, so that's the first criteria on the list. Now, in my scoring mechanism, there's no equal place, so it needs to be first, second and third. Even though I love each one of these bikes and how they look, and I love them all equally, I have to put them in order to actually make the scoring work at all. From a looks perspective, I think the VFR has to be in first place. I mean, it's just the size, the presence. I understand from the reviews it was a bit of not very well received when it was first brought out, but I think that large front fairing, the metallic paint, just the proportions of the bike, for me, it really looks perfect. So that has to come in first place. A very close second is the Rebel. When I saw this when it first came out, I thought, wow, that's what a bike should look like. I think the low seat, the blacked out looks, the cruiser style, I think all of those things together really made this a bike that I had to test drive. And when I saw it in the flesh, it just looked even better. So a completely different style from the VFR, and a very, very close second. And that brings us on to the Honda X-ADV, probably one of the strangest looking bikes on the market in the UK. I personally really like its funky looks, its unusualness, pretty unique. I think I've only seen one other on the road here in Scotland, and I really like the look of this. I mean, it's in third place, but it's a hard choice between any of these bikes. But the X-ADV has to come third because the other two are maybe just a little bit more traditional. So now you join me on a pretty typical ride that I do, and that's going to be the main part of the scoring. I think 10 criteria for, on paper, which one is the best bike, but more importantly, what are my top 10 regular rides, and which one of the bikes is best on each one of those runs, and those two combined gives us the total score. So coming up through Pitlochry, and then we're going to head up over the mountains, and you can see the typical single track roads. So we've covered styling. Specification, well, I have to put the Rebel first for specification because it's the latest model. The VFR's got a very good specification as well. I think that has to come second just because of the power, the 170 bhp, the 4-cylinder, the V4. I think all those things put it above the lower powered X-ADV. Which bike do I feel most confident on? And that has to be the Rebel. It is the easiest bike to ride, especially with the DCT. The X-ADV has got a similar seating position, and I would put that second. The VFR, with its power, its weight, the length of the bike as well. It's a long bike, which makes the steering, for me, feel I'm always having to put a little bit of effort into getting around corners, and certainly on the tighter, twistier roads, especially single track roads where you're reasonably low speed and tight corners. The VFR does definitely it struggles. Well, I struggle with the VFR on those smaller, tight roads. Practicality. With the X-ADV, I've got the SW Motec panniers on those, and those are cavernous, 45 litres each. So that has to come first. VFR's got its built-in panniers, odd shape, but adequate, especially the top box, which is huge. The Rebel's got very poor storage, and a third place for that. From a point of view of comfort, long distance comfort, the VFR is definitely the bike that I would go across Europe go on a long trip, a long day ride on good A roads. I think from a comfort perspective, it has to be the VFR. The X-ADV with the plastics and the fairing comes a very close second to the VFR, but I have to choose between the two of them. And the Naked Rebel, from a comfort perspective, it's an all-day ride. I've not got a problem. I read on the forums that a lot of people have a problem with the seat and the position of it. But for me, I can do 200-300 miles on it and feel fresh. So it's third place, but it's not like it's massively behind. It's just that the screen's there for wind protection on the other two. Engine and engine character. Well, I've put the VFR first because it's a V4, it's pretty unique, it's very, very fast, and the acceleration is blistering. Up to 70 in a blink of an eye, 70 to 120. You're going 120, you don't really notice the difference in the wind noise or anything. It's and the engine just takes you there all the time without any trouble at all. The VFR, number one place. The Rebel, I think it's a little bit further back. The parallel twin is a nice engine. It's got the right sort of level of power for me, just below 100 bhp, and I like the character of that engine. The ADV, well, it's a really good engine, and it's got in the NC750X, the NC750S, the Honda Integra, Forza and X-ADV all share the same engine, and it's a good power plant. Depending on which year, you're ranging around about the 50 brake horsepower mark. So it's not super quick, but certainly quick enough for me. It's just in third place, more because of the uniqueness of the VFR and the character of the Rebel. Weather protection, I've put the VFR down as second, a very close second to the Honda, basically because of the plastics and body position. I think the X-ADV just does it a little bit better in the rain. The Rebel's in third place, being a naked bike, of course, where the protection there is non-existent. Weight, this is more how do I handle the weight rather than how heavy the bike is. VFR is definitely a low third on this with 160 plus kilos. The X-ADV's quite heavy as well, but it's lighter than the Rebel, if I remember correctly, but the Rebel seems far lighter than the other two just because of its size, where the engine is, and its low slung, its low seat. It just feels really light, to be honest. How the bike sounds. For me, the bike sounds not a great criteria, but I want to have some character, and how the bike sounds is important for me from the point of view of riding the bike and knowing which gear I'm in and things like that. So it's not just about the aesthetics of the sound, it's the practicality as well. And from that perspective, the Rebel sounds the best, the X-ADV second, and the VFR's third, mainly because it's so quiet. I actually found that a little bit of a problem at reasonable speeds. The engine tends not to make much noise at all, and neither does the exhaust. So, from a comfort perspective, that's great, but from a practicality point of view, knowing which gear you're in and etc., it comes out the third. Handling is, for me, it's a subjective thing for me, this one. It's, the VFR's the best handling bike because, it's built for high-speed cornering, but it's in third place just mostly because of the riding I do, my skill levels, and the fact that the seating position on the X-ADV and Rebel just suits me better. So that's why it's that way around. So when you put these criteria together, the VFR and X-ADV are actually tied, and the Rebel comes out slightly better than the other two, but not by much. It's only a couple of points in it. So on paper, they're all fantastic bikes. I love each one of them, and it's really difficult to choose between them when you just look at these criteria. The Rebel edges it, but more importantly, it is about where I ride, why I ride, and my typical days out, and where do each one of these bikes, which one's first out the garage for the types of rides that I do. And here on the video, you join me just as you reach the summit of Moulin Moor, just above Pitlochry. This is where the road narrows a bit with into a sort of single track with passing places, and you really start to wind your way along really nicely. You have to watch out for the snow poles and occasional sheep on the road, and log lorries, caravans, camper vans. As I said to the children, it's not as fast as you can go around the corner, it's how quickly you can stop when there's something in the middle of the road. And I've come around the corner and found a group of hill walkers in the middle of the road on occasion. So it's you always have to watch your speed. So I want to put in a bonus criteria here, just because all three bikes are DCT. One of the reasons I bought the VFR was it was the first bike to have DCT, and I wanted to try it out. And even though this bike is a 2013 and has been an upgrade and tweak from the original launch, I would say that Honda made a big mistake in launching DCT on this model. It's just totally unsuited for the DCT. When you're in drive mode, this huge torquey high-speed engine it wants to lug along at 2,000 revs and 6th gear, and the bike feels uncomfortable. It really wants to have 1,000 more revs just to put her about. And when you want to go fast, you're using the torque of the engine rather than the capability of DCT. And then when you put it in sports mode, it's a monster. It won't go above 4th gear unless you're doing more than 70 miles an hour, it won't allow you to change up. So if you're in sports gear and you want to change up because you've reached the speed limit and you just want to get in line with the traffic, the bike won't let you change up to relax itself a little bit. You have to then change modes to get up into sixth gear. So there's just too much of a jump between drive and sports, and it only has those two modes switched by a button. So I will find myself on the VFR using the foot shifter, which is an option which I sourced from a dealer in Hungary, and that made a great difference to the bike. And I ran it actually mostly in manual mode, just because of the DCT in D or S really didn't suit my riding style, which kind of made it pointless being DCT. The X-ADV has got more modes. You select them via switch. You've got drive S1, 2 and 3. I mostly have it in S1, and that seems to suit my driving technique and the revs I like to drive at. And the 750 Torquay engine that's in that bike at 50 brake horsepower is far more suited to DCT, and it really is a good match between the two bikes. And then I get on to the Rebel, which is the latest model with modes, ride-by-wire. I only ever run it in custom mode with DCT set at just one below the top setting. Traction control is maximum. Engine braking at 3. I think it's 2 out of 3. And I only ever run in custom mode. Never bother with the other modes. I think it's more of a fad. So if I was to put down DCT scoring for this, it's unsurprising that the latest generation gets first place, then the X-ADV second, and the VFR third. And you will have noticed that the video I've changed onto the X-ADV. On the previous one I was on the VFR, and in this video I'm on my way out to Rannoch Station, another one of my favourite runs. And which bike I take out the garage is obviously one of the deciding criteria on which ones to keep and which ones to sell. So half the scores come from on paper, and the other half come from which bike would I take on which run. And starting with probably the most common run, which is the Blair Gowrie loop, which takes me over the hills through country lanes to the supermarkets and back in a nice little circuit of about 50 miles. Because it's a shopping trip, the X-ADV with the big panniers would be the first choice. The VFR with the built-in panniers second, and the Rebel, unless I was going for a pint of milk, in which case it would be the first choice, but on a normal supermarket run it would be third choice. Another favourite run of mine is out to Rannoch Station for a coffee at the railway station. It's a long dead end. It's a round trip of around about 70 miles. And the Rebel would be first choice out the garage for that, just because it's a twisty road, lots of scenery, it's not fast. The X-ADV would be second, primarily because the VFR isn't really suited to the choppiness of that road. Although the last bit of it is quite sweeping, but it's on single track roads. You're never really going much more than 60 miles an hour. Popping down to Perth is, it really depends what I'm going down for. If I was going to do some shopping, then it would need to be the X-ADV because of the panniers. But if it's just a general trip down there, the Rebel would be first out the garage. The VFR last, because it's not really a town bike. It's not for going around the streets, and it does heat up really quite hot if if you stop start traffic. One of the classic rides, which is over the hills, past Loch Tay or Loch Earn up to Tyne-Drum, and then if you've got time, up over the hills and through Glencoe, and then up to the other side of Rannoch Moor. and that is a fantastic ride. And with the first part being quite twisty, 50 mph limit down by the lochside, and then the second part, the long straights and views of Glencoe and the run up through Rannoch. So I would take the Rebel if I had a nice sunny day. If it was a little bit inclement, then it would probably be the VFR. I mean, the VFR is really suitable for those really long, sweeping A roads. X-ADV would be a third, but a close third. A regular ride for me right now while I'm still working is down to the office in Edinburgh once a week. And, well, that's motorway all the way, once you get past the first 30 miles. And as a motorway cruiser, there is nothing better than the VFR. I mean, that is entirely what it's designed for. And up and down to Edinburgh was really just a breeze on that bike. I went up and down a few times in X-ADV, and again, very capable. Motorway speeds, you don't need that blistering acceleration, very competent. And I never actually took the Rebel down to Edinburgh, not to work or anything else. So what we have here is VFR has to be first because it's entirely designed for cruising and crossing continents. But for both the VFR and the X-ADV, I found that they are very noisy with the screens, especially the X-ADV. I've never found a screen which I feel totally happy with. And that's actually one of the main reasons I wanted to change the X-ADV, the noise off the screen. The VFR, you're travelling at 70, accelerate to 100 miles an hour feels the same as 70 miles an hour. It's, that fairing is absolutely wonderful. But, I don't know why I didn't quite enjoy it. I think it's probably because it's so fast and so capable. Riding on the motorway actually gets a little bit boring. But hey, I'm going to skim through the next 5 because there's only one winner, and that's the Rebel, and the other 2 flip-flop. But mostly it's the VFR which wins out. There's the big loop, the Glencoe loop, which is up over the hills via Dalwhinnie, Fort William, down through Glencoe, Tyne Drum, then back along one of the lochsides. So it's a big day out, and it's a 5-6 hour ride, and that is for me really enjoyable cruiser style. Then we have the Cairngorm loop, which is up and over 2 of the ski resorts, and then blast back down the motorway, not motorway but the A9. I've done that a few times, and I think the Rebel has been my first choice, the VFR second, and I've done it a few times on the X-ADV as well. I mean, they're all very close, but it has to be that order. John O'Groats is a mixed touring style, and for me, that'd be the Rebel, the VFR, and then the X-ADV. I often pop out for a coffee and go over the hills to Braemar and back again, so it's in and out. And I would prefer to do the Rebel for a quick coffee. The VFR's too big to drag out the garage just to go for a short ride, and that road, if you're doing 40 or 50 miles an hour, you're going quite fast, and then there's a few straights where you can open it up a little bit, but VFR is really not suitable as a sort of everyday, just going for a little jaunt. And then we've got the Schiehallion Loop, which is really up over the mountain there, very twisty, up and down, quite steep in places, and the VFR is totally unsuitable for that. The X-ADV and the Rebel, both very capable on that front, but the Rebel edges it. So those are the 10 favourite rides, and those scores for those clearly put the Rebel way ahead of the other 2. So why did I sell the best bike I've ever owned? Well, the VFR is the best bike I've ever owned from one perspective, and the X-ADV from another. They're both very capable bikes, excellent to ride, beautiful to look at, even quirky, ugly, beautiful if you go look at the X-ADV. The VFR, quality-wise, speed, the spec sheet, the engine, as a mile-munching cruise across the continents, then that would be the first choice. But it's not the kind of riding that I do. The X-ADV, the noise from the screen, the strange stance when you're standing on it, it's wide, and if it wasn't for those things, I think it'd be almost the perfect all-round bike. And from that perspective, just as an all-rounder, it is the best bike I've ever owned. But the scoring doesn't lie. The Rebel is my first choice. And when you look at the scores, it zooms ahead when you consider what I use a bike for, where I go, and what motivates me to get out on the bike. The Rebel is the one that's the keeper. So, thank you very much for listening, if you've got this far. And the next video is going to say, covering, did I make the right choice in swapping out the VFR and X-ADV, and what would the scores be for the new bikes? Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.